Thank you for pressing start on episode 59 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today, we have two secret games, followed by a review of our featured game, Cocoon. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, and now joining me is a guy with big dad mode energy taking you on in River City. He's here to spread joy and transform a toy. It's your berserk boy, DiscoCola. How's it going?
I'm going to be honest, I've been carrying around my burdens this week, kind of like a big marble on my back, so I'm a little bit drained. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. My orb-carrying spider bot. It's kind of fitting.
Yeah.
Synergistic.
To be honest, there's not a ton to work with there.
No, there's not. Yeah. I had a few options of what to reference.
I really had to buckle down and be like, orb, marble, beetle, bug. It took me a while.
I appreciate the thought you put into that. I've listened to podcasts that do a similar thing, and a lot of them tend to do it right before they start recording. Like, they barely give it any thoughts.
Oh, geez.
I appreciate the thought you put in. Yes.
I am not on my... There's a reason one of us did improv classes and one of us did not.
Even to this day, I don't consider myself the best improver, but those are references to our featured game, Cocoon. And this is a game that came out last year. It's a game both of us have been looking forward to for a long time.
Very hyped about it. Yeah.
Yes. And we will talk more about that in our featured game section. Here at the top of the show, we have a couple of fun things to talk about. We've got some winners for the IGF Awards to discuss. But first, Disco, a couple episodes ago, our premiere episode of Season 6, we reviewed Blasphemous. We talked about some of the achievements we could get in that game. You recently made some more progress in this game.
Yeah, so I've actually been my schedule's been really tight with secret and featured games and co-op games, so I finally had some time to go back to it a little bit, but mostly because I just really wanted to. It was that good. But yeah, I was finally able to get a 100% save file. I don't have all the trophies. I don't have the platinum yet or anything, but I did finally get that 100% save file, which you got quite a bit sooner than I did.
A little bit before our recording for that episode.
Yeah.
But I remember finishing the game and then spending maybe 5 hours just running around the map, getting 100% on the map. Is that kind of what you did?
Well, so the first thing I did was I tried to finish Miriam's platforming challenges, which is not required for the 100%.
It's not. I should have told you that.
I knew it wasn't, but I was like, those first three were so fun. You know, it was so great. I thought I was going to have a lot of fun. The fourth one was rough. And then the fifth one can just
heck off.
Yeah, just jump into the oblivion.
So I did the first 4. I tried the 5th for maybe 40 minutes and I rage quit.
Yeah.
Did you finish it?
I finished it, but it took me, I had to do it over 2 different sessions. And the time I did finish it, it took me an hour or more. And I was watching a video that showed these skips that you can do.
Yeah, where you jump down, you do a blind jump down to catch a platform, and otherwise you'd have to go around. I
can't do all the skips, but I did some of them, and it's the only way I was able to get it done.
I honestly really respected those platforming challenges for the first 2 or 3, and then actually in 4 and 5, I kind of fell out of love with them.
Yeah, I know, because I remember when you were streaming it, I was like, oh, Bopo, you're going to love this. And
right,
you did.
And I did.
I was right. I knew, and the first 3 were awesome.
That's not to say that the first 3 aren't still awesome. It's just that, I just wish that could have wrapped up a little bit more approachably.
Yeah.
So was the time worth it to do those challenges for you? Okay.
Not even a little bit, but it's done, and I assume I don't ever have to do it again if I don't,
right.
I do have to do a different save file.
You don't even get a trophy or anything for that,
I know.
Unfortunately. But for you you want to do everything in the game regardless of whether there's an achievement or a trophy, which is
At least
cool.
in this case, yeah,
Yeah.
because I did really love the game a lot.
Yeah. And then so for the base trophy list in Blasphemous, running around the map, doing miscellaneous things.
Yep.
Those arena challenges weren't too bad, were
Nope,
they? Yeah,
pretty
very
easy.
very straightforward. It's just
I found like the 4th and 5th one like even easier than like the 3rd one. Like I didn't even find that the difficulty scaled correctly.
Yeah, and they're over in a GIF. You just have to run to them.
Yeah.
So it's not too bad.
Yeah.
But then there's running around the map.
Yeah.
Because there are all of these miscellaneous tasks to help build your save file to the 100%, but then just getting every single square on the map uncovered and explored, getting that map to 100% is necessary for the save file 100%. And I got to the point where I was at 99.95% of the map uncovered.
Yep.
And that's actually where I spent the last 5 hours, was running around trying to find the last 0.05%. Did you have that happen?
I didn't spend quite that long just looking for my map piece because I was spending a lot of time getting some rosary beads and getting rosary knots that I was still missing. But I did take a long time just meticulously looking at this map online and matching it up to what I had on my PlayStation screen. And I was just like, no, I have everything. I do.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't.
I was missing one room, and you warned me about this room. You said, hey, there's this room, and it's kind of dumb. You have to dash under a hidden wall.
Yep.
And you warned me about it. It left my brain, and it was the exact same room I was missing.
Yeah, and it is, it's the room with the painting of the bowl.
Yep.
Where you get rewards for finding all of the cherub babies.
The
babies. If you slide to the left, there's a little crevice that you have to slide under on the left side of that room to get to this room with paintings in it. And I don't think that room was available from the start. I could be mistaken.
I don't know that either.
But that room that you find in there has paintings that reference other games.
Yeah.
And I remember taking screenshots of it. I'm not remembering like every single reference right now. But
yeah, Shovel Knight's in there.
Shovel Knight,
Rhyme.
That's right, Rhyme. There's a character that looks like it's from the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood.
Yep.
Is that
That
right?
is one of them. Yep.
And that game only just came out last year, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So that character must appear.
It's a Jack Move Berserk Boy situation.
I guess. Yeah. And then there's a group of like kids, it looks like.
Yeah. I had it open that showed.
Is that Oxenfree? That's
no,
not
it's not Oxenfree.
No.
I had a page open the other night that said
That
what
was
they
explaining.
all were.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool that we know some of them. We also don't know some of them. And I like Easter eggs like that. And that's the, umpteenth time that's happened where we find references like that.
I love when indie game developers point me toward more indie games.
Yeah, it's like a subtler curation.
Yeah.
List of suggestions for us to play.
I agree. I love it.
Well, congratulations on the 100%. And actually,
I don't play that. Don't play the.
Well, I don't know. I've got a little something.
Okay.
To celebrate you getting this trophy. Because it is a substantial trophy. Okay. So
all right.
Here, let's just let's give you a little there.
That's it.
Just
okay.
Like that's the bronze trophy or whatever it is for getting 100%. Actually, I think it's a gold trophy.
It is a gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
It brought me from like 50% to like 80%. It was awesome.
Sweet.
We'll both explore our little bit again when we get a platinum in the future.
And then another thing we wanted to talk about was last season, I don't remember which episode it was, but last season we talked about an indie game award show. It is the Independent Games Festival. We talked about some nominees because we were familiar with some of these games and developers. And at the time, we just knew the nominees. We didn't know the winners. And now this festival has happened. And we wanted to bring it up this episode because Cocoon was nominated for at least one of these awards. Cocoon was nominated for the grand prize.
Excellence in audio.
Excellence in audio.
Design. Excellence in design.
Oh, it's a lot of awards. 3 awards.
3 of them. Yep.
Yes. So it didn't win any of those, but to be nominated in 3 categories is very impressive. And actually, a past secret game, Venba, won the Grand Prize Award. And some of these other games I am familiar with. I played the demo for Cryptmaster during Next Fest. So that's what won Excellence in Design, for instance.
And I'm really interested in a game called Phonopolis. Oh, right. It's the Amanita one.
It's the Amanita one.
It's the Amanita one.
Yeah,
Of course, I'm going to be interested in it anyway.
Yeah, and that one's not out yet, actually, at time of recording. By the time this episode's out, it actually might be out. I'm not sure. But we talked about this last season because we thought it was interesting that a game that isn't out yet is being nominated for Excellence in Visual Art.
And that it won.
And it won. So some of these other games I think are out. I mean, Venba's out. That was also nominated for that. Some of these other ones are probably out. Oh, Darkest Dungeon 2 is out. I know that. So thought that was interesting. I guess you get what the visual design of a game is before it comes out, so they could still be nominated. But they also do tons of honorable mentions.
Yeah.
So this festival's been going on for, it looks like, over a decade. I've not really ever looked into it in the past, but we just wanted to look at that this year. I don't know if we'll look at it that closely every year, but maybe when we talk about games that are nominated, we'll give the IGF little shout out, little mention.
And if we have another year like we did in 2023, there's a good chance that there will be a lot of overlap.
I know, yeah. Speaking of 2023, are you perceiving a similar trajectory in 2024 with like just sheer quantity of excellent games that you just can't wait to play? Or is it too early to call it?
I would say it's too early to call it. You're a little bit more in the know just in general by like actively and physically having access to Steam regularly. So you know about more games than I do, so you'd have a better idea. But, I did spend my entire season break on 2024 releases that I just couldn't wait to start. So that's a pretty good sign, I would say.
That is a good sign. I think for me, a lot of it comes down to what's coming out in the fall specifically. Like not the summer, not the winter. The fall seems like that's when a lot of games I'm looking forward to are coming out, but you don't always know for sure until it happens. Games can sometimes get delayed. And sometimes games are announced as like Q3 2024, but that isn't a promise yet. So we'll see.
Whenever I see Q number, I'm like, it's flexible.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Before we move on, if you're listening to Underplayed right now, thank you, and we love you. If you haven't already, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It should only take a few seconds, and we'd really appreciate it. And hey, if you have a friend who likes indie games, maybe share our podcast with them too. It's time for our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. I know you're playing without me. Secret games. Well, I'm here to tell you, baby. Secret games. I've been playing too. Secret games.
Ooh. In Secret Games, we each talk about an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode recording. I don't know what Disco's been playing the last few weeks. He doesn't know what I've been playing. Why do we keep these a secret? Just to have fun, just to add a little extra layer of mystery and intrigue. We can pick any indie game to play and review as long as we haven't covered it on Underplayed before. We will start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 59 of Underplayed.
Okay. I am so excited to tell you about how I actually even discovered my secret game today. My secret game is something I saw on a little children's show called Mother Goose Club, of all things.
Okay.
So Mother Goose Club is just one of those like infant shows where they sing a bunch of nursery rhymes and whatever.
Okay.
But as they tried to adapt to like modern children, they started doing like gameplay videos.
Interesting.
And so this is where I saw my secret game.
Lost Ruins 2.
Oh my God. Oh, that would get canceled immediately. But so that's where I discovered it, and I've been looking forward to this anecdote for a long time.
Interesting. Okay.
This game is a secret game developed by Is Hard and Sometimes You, and it is called Ovivo.
Oh, I'm familiar with this. This is on my secret games list.
Not
Stolen.
anymore. I took
That's
it.
okay. That's totally okay.
It is totally a Bopo game, so I do hope that you still probably play it someday.
Yeah.
but-
And I was not going to pick this anytime soon, so you're not stepping on my toes.
Yeah, this is
but-
one I've been like, I wish I could synergize this with a game this season,
Yeah.
but it just hasn't happened yet.
Dope. Okay. And also to be clear, I have this game purchased, and I think I've only seen the trailer back when I purchased it, and it was on sale, very good discount at the time.
Yep.
But other than that, I don't really remember it too.
Cool.
So don't expect me to know much about this.
All the same, you have that trailer, so you can watch it again.
Perfect.
Okay, so there is some sort of story here, I think, but it's mostly being doled out in the names of the trophies and achievements. But even having the platinum and seeing the full list of trophies laid out, I still can't make much sense of it. So
Very abstract.
story, yeah, if you're artistically smooth-brained like me, it's like nearly non-existent. So that makes the setup portion of this game pretty short. As far as gameplay goes, you play as a little orb with an antenna, kind of something like a Loco Roco, but you don't have a face. And you are in this like black and white world, and your orb character, who is, according to Steam, apparently named Ovo, can roll along the surface of the opposite color. But when on the surface, you can swap Ovo's color from black to white, which will also swap gravity as well as which color surface you travel upon. The world Ovo travels has a lot of hills and peaks and valleys, which is really encouraging the player to experiment with momentum because you're rolling. And you use that momentum to reach new areas, platforms, and collectibles. It kind of feels a little bit in practice like that last section of Limbo where you're timing your gravity change just right to get the right
Yes.
momentum.
Yeah.
Except in this case, you want as much momentum as possible as opposed to trying to avoid getting too much momentum. Like most platformers, you can fall into the void or fall onto some spikes. So there is death in this game, but the only real cost is just quickly getting sent back to a checkpoint. I'd say it's even quicker than like Celeste dying.
Wow. That's noteworthy.
Yeah.
Because Celeste is really fast.
But yeah, there's not much more to it than that. It's a pretty straightforward game once you understand what's happening. Occasionally, you might run into some special platforms that affect your movement in unique ways, or there might be a dragon creature that will chase you, adding some haste to your movement. But that's really about it. So I'll move right into it. Here's what I like about Ovivo. Up first, the game is really straightforward. It takes you less than a minute to understand what's going on, and when a new mechanic is added, it's usually pretty obvious what is going on right away. Because of this, Ovivo is pretty approachable, and I was even able to play this with my 4-year-old for a little while.
Oh, wonderful.
And they weren't getting discouraged like they normally would with something like a Mario, where it's like, Dad, I can't do it, because they
Yeah.
can't figure out how to hold down the run button.
So they've tried other platformers that are mostly like 2D,
Yeah.
like this game is
Yep.
2D, that require more simultaneous inputs to
Exactly.
accomplish what you want. Yeah.
In this button, you just have left and right, and then you have your gravity switch. So I think it's a great game to start really young children on. It's got platforming concepts like your Marios and Mega Mans that we were trained on, but the stakes are way lower and it's just way easier to play. You move left and right, and you've got the one button that does the one thing, which is exactly where my 4-year-old is in grasping controls. So you can move slowly, you can press a button at the same time. Perfect. I like the way that this game does collectibles. The world is littered with these little dots called Morse dots, like Morse code. These will simply just like be along the main path or just slightly off the main path in the periphery. And these are your minor collectibles. And then there are things called story symbols, and there's 3 in each level. Sometimes they require you to complete a challenge using platforming or gravity or momentum. And these are also what doles out the trophies I mentioned. So you're getting your story, I guess, through these story symbols. But best of all, the game tracks the collectibles in a way that's really easy to understand. On your pause screen, it shows you which of the 3 story symbols you've collected and which Morse dots you've collected and which ones you haven't. And they're all in the order they appear in the level.
Love that.
Um,
Love that. That's Celeste
Yeah,
stuff again.
exactly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're also really unlikely to miss any of the collectibles anyways. There are certain places where you might, but in general, you will see pretty much everything if you're going the right way. And then the menus, they're all really intuitive and fun to navigate as well. If I missed a Morse dot, it's easier to start the level over, and it's really easy to start a level over in Ovivo. It's very, very intuitive. Love the menus here. The art direction in Ovivo might be the best thing about it, though, in my opinion. It's such a cool, high contrast world, and there's always hints of something happening beyond your viewpoint, too. And then when you reach the end of the level, the camera zooms way out, and you get what is basically just this really cool piece of artwork. You get to see a little bit of that in the trailer.
Yeah, there's a part with what looks like a Triforce.
Yeah.
A lot of Triforce action, lots of triangles going on.
So you get just the wider scale of the level you were just in.
That's so cool. Yeah.
But yeah, that zoom out might be worth the price of admission alone in most
Wow.
cases. And then lastly, the music in Ovivo is really solid. The soundtrack is from an artist going by Broken Kites, and it's just good. That is where my likes end, however. Unfortunately, there are a few big issues I have with the game. When I planned my secret games for the season, I originally had this slated for our previous episode with Super Meat Boy.
Okay.
I was planning on synergizing on momentum platforming.
Okay.
But after I started, and also a little bit because of timing, I decided to swap my secret games, and that's because the actual momentum platforming in Ovivo just isn't very fun.
Okay.
Like,
So the game wants you to go faster and faster.
yeah,
And-
it really wants you to utilize those peaks and valleys a lot
And
to jump to higher places.
It sounds like maybe you would prefer more of a controlled approach or more of an approach that rewards any kind of speed you want to take.
No, not necessarily. I was really looking forward to the momentum platforming. It just doesn't quite work. Like the timing of the button press doesn't feel right, and you don't have a large like window where getting that button press works. So you're often falling down the peak and missing your very small window to jump out the other side.
Yeah. You did mention the limbo thing already at the end of the game, and I remember that being a huge, like, it was a trial and error thing. And some of the times that I got past a platforming section at the end of Limbo, I feel like maybe I was lucky or I just guessed correctly. It's not that I was necessarily like understanding, oh, I got to hit it right here. That's when I need to change the gravity, you know?
See, and here's the thing is that that's also the end of Limbo. Like that's the hardest thing you have to do in Limbo.
This is the thing.
This is
the whole
the
thing.
thing. Yeah. So I think it needed just a little bit, maybe just a little bit bigger margin of error, or maybe it just isn't meant to be played on PS4. It seems like it is. That's where the physical copy is. But yeah, just the timing didn't feel right, and I still never got the hang of it. So every time I really was forced to do that momentum, I was actually getting frustrated.
I see this game is also on Android. So like imagine playing this on like a mobile device and you're tapping a screen.
It could be
maybe that's
simpler
more
tapping, maybe.
intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also have to press left and right at the same time. I imagine that might complicate things,
Yeah.
but I don't know that for sure. So anyways, instead of synergizing on momentum platforming, I am basically synergizing on orb shape for this episode. And that's what's going on.
There you go.
I mentioned that you're getting the story beats from the trophy names, and the Steam page does mention that the game is really metaphorical. So I'm getting crumbs. Well, they might not even be. It's more like I'm getting a faint sense of a story.
Yeah.
But maybe there is one, and I don't feel like the game is really earning it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like we've talked on the podcast before about how I like to figure things out, and that's not always your jam. And I think games like Hyperlight Drifter give a little and then leave a reasonable amount up to your interpretation. I get that the drifter is sick. That is shown to me. I get that the quadrant is plagued by some sort of tyrant. That's shown to me. But why defeating these tyrants and ultimately the final boss matters, deciphering that motivation is up to me. Ovivo isn't really giving me anything though. Like I'll get a series of 4 or 5 story symbols that kind of seems like a poetic story is beginning to emerge. But then I'll get one that seems to have no connection to anything else I've read so far. So maybe while I keep going, you can pull up the trophy list and kind of see that for yourself, because
I will look at that.
You'll get that for a minute and then you'll be like, oh, now how does that fit in? So I'm not really getting the story here. And if it's being metaphorical or super artistic, I feel like it's still not landing. It's not earning a story.
Did you get the platinum?
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a very easy
Yeah,
platinum.
I'm seeing a high completion rate.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get that deciphering a story isn't the point or the intention, but if it's going to be the case, I think the art direction and movement concepts are unique enough that collecting a story symbol can be as simple as you collected this symbol rather than now fish fills its hunger. Like it could just be a collectible. Like I think the concepts at the core of the gameplay are enough. I don't think it needs to have this story that is impossible to figure out. I mentioned some of the unique obstacles that you encounter. I just wish there was a little bit more of that. They're introduced at sort of like these odd intervals, and you don't always get to reuse them in a way that is satisfying. Certain special platforms will appear multiple times, but others are sort of just a one-off. And there's no like pattern to it. And then this is a small thing. There are some split paths on a couple of levels. One direction will lead you to a story symbol, and the other direction is just the rest of the level. And if you pick the rest of the level, it can be insanely difficult or impossible to go back if you made the wrong guess. So I did have to restart a few levels just to make sure I could get the story symbol that I missed.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about it. Ovivo is a game I've had in my library for a while now, just waiting for the right time to synergize with it. I've been really looking forward to it. However, the momentum mechanic that I feel partially defines the game left a lot to be desired for me. I did still have a breezy and mostly enjoyable time nabbing all the collectibles. And now I also have a game to add to Suika Game and Untitled Goose Game as something that I can play with my kid.
Oh, there you go.
And if you're looking for a quick Zen experience with low stakes, then I recommend Ovivo to you. For me, though, Ovivo needed just a little bit more, or at least a little bit more manageable controls. So I have to give it a 6.5 for me.
6.5. All right. I noticed the title Ovivo is a palindrome. We read it the same forward and backwards.
Oh, yeah.
I have to imagine that's thematically relevant to the gameplay of like kind of switching
probably
gravities and the black and white stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of clever. For people curious about like maybe other games this is similar to, I guess just like maybe not the style of platforming is like Pixel Junk Eden, but the designs and sort of the perspective. You're this very small thing. It's very Pixel Junk Eden. And then also I was reminded of Hohokum, which is another like side-scrolling game where you kind of fly around all these worlds with very simple art, but also just very elegant and beautiful. I'm curious, how did you research what game was being shown on Mother Goose Power Hour or whatever it's called?
I don't remember, to be honest.
You don't remember? So it didn't say like Ovivo flashing on the screen? It might have.
It might have, because this was like post Roku device installed into my television. So we're watching this on a Roku channel. So it might have just been as simple as I pressed the like little info button.
And this is a while back?
This probably would have been when Bear was just born. So maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
But it might have just been as simple as pressing the info button on my Roku remote.
Yeah, could have been that. Interesting. Well, I admire like a program, a show, like displaying an indie game.
Yeah.
Just that's cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that was their intention or if they were just looking for something as like, this looks appealing for children, maybe.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe someone at Mother Goose Power Hour knows the Ovivo people, like knows somebody at Ishard. Sometimes you.
I would be shocked, but that could be. They do have like all of their special characters. Like they have special Minecraft looking characters for all of the Mother Goose kids. So
okay.
I don't imagine there was that much thought into it.
Okay, fair. That's fair. Well, I'm so happy you gave this a shot. I will still probably want to look into it someday. And
I think this is definitely more your speed, and if
Okay.
you can get the controls down, I know that you will love it.
Okay, cool. And then like, how long does it take to finish/complete? Would you say?
I had to do it over multiple play sessions just because of the kids, but it probably took me 3 hours to complete.
Okay, that sounds like a really good length.
Super
Okay.
short. If you're better at it than me, you will
Cool.
finish it even faster. And part of that also is my 4-year-old playing the game too,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
they were with me on
Totally
all my
makes
sessions.
sense. Totally makes sense. So I will remove this from my secret games list now.
Yes.
That's one less that I have to consider in the future. Very good. Well, thank you. Oh, what can you play Ovivo on?
Ovivo is on Windows, Linux, Mac, Android, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 5, and even though there is a physical PEGI version of Ovivo on PS4, I played the digital PS4 version.
It's time for my secret game. My secret game is called Billy Bumbum, a cheeky puzzler. And I actually also have a funny story about how I discovered this game and also decided to purchase this game.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a second. So this is a 2023 puzzle game developed by Frambosa and published by Bonus Stage Publishing. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "This cute puzzle game will kick your butt. Behind the sweet pastels of Billy Bumbum lie puzzles for the true thinky mind. Use seemingly simple mechanics in surprisingly deep and satisfying ways to rescue your friends in over 250 levels. Fart for freedom." End quote.
Oh, no. So that's why his name is Bum Bum. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a butt-themed puzzle game. This is Billy Bumbum, a cheeky puzzler. So in this game, it is an isometric perspective. It is technically, I think, a Sokoban style puzzle game. We had this last season with Bonfire Peaks. Sokoban games, just to review, are puzzle games where you're trying to fit boxes into rightful places. And the style that a Sokoban puzzle game can take can actually vary quite a bit, as long as it's some kind of play on, we have shapes, we need to fit them into places. How do we rearrange our puzzle or our map to get them that way? So this is a very different personality and mood from Bonfire Peaks. Bonfire Peaks was very brooding and quiet, reflective, all these things. This is a very colorful, sort of cheery, in-your-face game where you play as Billy, a cube with a face and a butt. Billy is part of a community of these like geometric creatures. And I think the leader of all of these creatures is this dragon head that's named Big Mama. Okay, so Big Mama is just a dragon head, but her body can be made up of the cube-shaped members of like Billy's tribe or whatever they are. So you have all these cubes with faces on them. They all have different names and personalities, and they can like sort of link together, and then you've got the full dragon going on. So I'm probably not making a lot of sense right now, but these different cubes that are Billy's friends, they all have different names. Like I said, there's Magic Mikey, who's a fortune teller. There's Augustus, who's this snobby member of some kind of an upper class. Tater is an aspiring comedian. Colette is a French singer. Those are just a handful. There are more. And we get an opening cutscene in Billy Bumbum that is wordless. And you see these shapes hanging out one day, and they get visited by these black blobby invaders who sense that Billy and his friends are magical in some way, and they want that magic for themselves. So what they do is they imprison everybody. But Billy is special because he has a butt. So he farts his way out of his trap. He's the only one who's able to escape. He farts his way out and he lands into the opening level. And all of this happens very briefly because this is a puzzle game first and foremost. All of that is just very quick, like set dressing for let's get us into this puzzle game and start solving puzzles. So if it sounds really like obtuse, abstract, weird, off the wall, that's why. In Billy Bumbum, you navigate Billy along grids of cubes. And in each level, there is a friend of Billy's trapped in a box. And your goal is to roll Billy cube by cube on this grid and land him butt down on top of the box so he can fart his friend out of it.
No.
And since a cube has 6 sides, a lot of the puzzle solving has to do with figuring out how to orient Billy so that we get that butt to be down when we make that last move. And so sometimes you're playing this game and you can navigate to that cube that's at the end that has the friend trapped, but maybe you can't get Billy's butt onto it because you can only move 1 square at a time. So you have to go back and figure out how to get that right last move happening.
Oh my gosh. Starting now, listener, drink every time we say butt.
Yeah, exactly. And every time we move over a cube, it disappears. So you have to plan your moves carefully. And as expected, there are lots of different kinds of platforms and obstacles that are introduced slowly. There are gray boxes, which can be moved over twice before disappearing. There are lasers in some of the levels. Those will hurt you and you'll have to undo your move or restart the puzzle unless you face your bum toward the laser, then that you won't get hurt. You like sort of stop the laser. Yeah, there's there's not a lot of logic to it. So you kind of have to
butt shield. Okay.
Yeah. And then there are arrow pads that launch blocks in a direction until they hit a wall. There are rotating platforms where if you land Billy on those, they'll rotate Billy an extra time and then he can make his next move. There are portals that will teleport Billy to different parts of the puzzle. You can also roll cubes that are stacked on top of the floor. So Billy has the floor that he rolls on and it's disappearing. But then there will be cubes on the next level up where Billy is, and Billy can run into those, and those will just keep rolling until they hit a stopping point. You can also redo the last move. You can reset the whole level with a button press. And as mentioned in the Steam description, there are over 250 levels. There is a level selection map screen split up into 8 areas. Each of those areas has several dozen levels. And within the levels of an area, there's a general theme or new kind of mechanic explored. So this is a lot like Baba Is You or the aforementioned Bonfire Peaks. You'll go into one of the worlds and it will introduce the portals. And then that whole world sort of explores the portals. And, I've not seen the portals before. That's this area's thing. So now we get to the point where I talk about why I picked this game and purchased it. I played this game's demo during Steam Next Fest in 2023, and I actually had a good enough time with it that I tweeted about it. I keep threads of my favorite demos, and I called this one out, thought it was a fun puzzle game for what I was able to play. And in September 2023, Jonathan from Frambosa reached out to me in Twitter DMs and let me know the game was released because I had tweeted about how much I loved the demo and I had called it my game of the rear. And
10 out of 10.
So Jonathan messaged me and said, hey, if you end up reviewing it, would love to hear it. I told him hey, I might end up reviewing this on my podcasts, Underplayed. And he was like, if you end up reviewing it, I'd love to hear it. So I did not get access to the game through a publisher key or anything. I bought it because I tried and genuinely enjoyed the demo. And here we are for the review. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jonathan, for the nudge to try the full release. And what I like about Billy Bumbum, a cheeky puzzler, is that this game is really satisfying to solve puzzles in. It's the kind of puzzle game where you get just enough in a level that to give you options of what to do, but it's small enough of a playing field that you can trial and error your way until you figure things out. In each level, I was trying to think like 2 or 3 or 4 steps ahead to figure out how to get my bum onto the box at the end. And I managed to finish the main story of the game without looking up any solutions.
Hackers. You love a puzzle game that does that.
And you remember like Bonfire Peaks, not to bring that game up too much, but I looked up tons of solutions in that to finish it. And I think the difficulty in this game works really well because the harder levels are more out of the way and optional. They are there, but they're not forced onto you to make progress and to see the credits. And actually, that's like another thing I love about this game is the map. I love how the map is organized with this line of levels that take you from area to area. And it's kind of a straight line. As you do these main levels, you're just going horizontally throughout this whole world on this map screen. But then as you make progress, you get little branches off of that path.
It's really satisfying to look at.
You see that in the trailer?
Yeah, it's in the trailer.
You have these really long paths of like optional levels. And if you really want to explore more of what a world has to offer, you can really like delve into dozens of extra almost bonus levels. Another thing I really like about the game is the polish in its visuals and performance. This game is very bright and colorful and smooth looking. There's a sheen across the entire game that feels like a lot of care was put into making it an approachable puzzle game. So I think this puzzle game is not only approachable in its difficulty, but also it's approachable in its appearance. I appreciate that a lot about Billy Bumbum. And then I get to a handful of dislikes. You know, you can already kind of tell this, but the story is the lightest of set dressing. Puzzle games don't need to have a complex story, but we are given all these characters with these admittedly cliche yet distinct personalities, and they could have just done more there. When we free some of Billy's fellow cube friends, they will talk to us in text on screen, and it's very brief. I guess there was just an opportunity there to say more, do more, maybe entertain us a little more. This game has music, of course. It is funky and relaxing and groovy and hip would be the adjectives I would use to describe it. But it can get a little repetitive just because the track list isn't very long, at least based on what I've heard. So there were some songs I got a little tired of.
And it seems like the levels are pretty short too.
The simpler ones, like when you enter a new area and you're introduced to a new mechanic, those levels can be done in 30 seconds or less. And you're hearing the start of that song and you don't really get the full song before you're moving on. And maybe you hear that song again in another 3 or 4 levels. So I would start a level and I'd go, oh, this level has this song. I immediately could recognize it. Yeah. It's very similar to how I felt about Grapple Dog's soundtrack from several seasons back. You know, sometimes I'm just listening to the music a lot. And then there are some quality of life features I wish I could have, like let me rewatch the cutscenes. I couldn't figure out how to do that. Let me see a tally of how many levels total I've finished. I was manually going through the maps to count how many I finished to give you that report. And overall, I actually only finished around 60 levels out of 250 levels.
Oh, okay. I was wondering how you had the time to finish 230 levels of anything. But.
And I didn't, and that's kind of on to my next point where I say that 250 levels is very impressive. I like that they put so many ideas in this game, but because so much of that is optional and I really get a thrill out of like making progress through the areas and seeing more mechanics introduced, I don't feel enticed to explore all 250 levels. And I also know that if I chased the 100% completion, I think I would get like fatigued doing all of that puzzling. So I just don't feel enticed to chase the 100%. And
so maybe less of it optional, but then less overall?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that could be the case. But I also think Frambosa is okay with this because of how they've constructed this world of levels. I think they were just really thorough with their ideas, a lot of exploration of all their ideas. And that's something I appreciate more than I love.
Gotcha.
It's something I appreciate more than I want to actually explore fully, if that makes sense. So overall, Billy Bumbum, A Cheeky Puzzler, is a cozy and goofy puzzle game. Its puzzles feel satisfying to solve. It's not the most innovative puzzle game. Its story is just there to give you an excuse to play the game, and that's fine. I'm not going to 100% this game because of that puzzle fatigue that would set in. But I'm going to rate this a 7.5.
7.5.
Which is a positive score from
Yep.
me. Playable on PC through Steam, as far as I'm aware. That's the only platform that I could find.
Okay. I don't have a lot of questions, just a couple of observations. One, here in the trailer, I can see that the dragon, when the cubes are a part of the dragon's body, Billy Bumbum's butt is the tail.
It is
end
the
of
tail.
dragon. That's
Appropriately so.
very funny.
Yes.
Fun little
Yeah.
nod there.
Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, just a couple of observations. I would say that this is reminding me, I think you have essentially played the closest thing we're ever going to get to Watum 2. So congratulations
my gosh,
on that.
I didn't even think of that. That's funny.
But it also kind of reminds me less the kind of puzzle solving mechanics, but more like the spirit of 2D and Top D.
Okay.
So if you're finding yourself enjoying this, maybe try 2D and Top D or vice versa.
The colors even are kind of like the
Yeah.
colorful world is reminding me of what I remember from that. But personality-wise, seems like it's a good match.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, I have played a couple of games where using the 6-sided puzzle solving thing is an element, and I'm super bad at it. So I am very scared of Billy Bumbum just because of that. Like I can't, my spatial reasoning skills are very low.
Yeah. You kind of get into the groove after solving enough puzzles of understanding that, again, this game isn't going to give you the bare minimum blocks on the floor to solve the puzzle. It's going to give you a couple of extraneous blocks here and there. It's just enough of a balance, I think, to make the playing field not overwhelming, but also like making it difficult enough that it's satisfying when you do find that right combination of moves to make. And
Gotcha.
I was thinking about the end of the level. I was thinking like, oh, there's a block at the end of the level that I need to land on, but there's an empty space in front of that. So I can't get to it yet. There is a block that I can use Billy to push into that empty space. I get it. The spirit of this level is I need to get that block next to Billy pushed to that empty space. Now, how do I do that? So I was usually working backwards. If you're the kind of person who likes to work
I do
backward,
like to troubleshoot.
if you like troubleshooting by thinking about problems from the end and trying to make your way back to the start, that's really the core of being successful in this game, in my opinion.
I'm glad you said that because that does change my perspective on it a little bit.
Okay.
I guess I do have one question now that I've got this trailer on loop. You save your friends in the boxes. I see one of them explodes and it has like 3 friends in there. Is there any way to like view all of your friends that you've saved? Is there like a catalog?
Actually, yes.
Like
That's a really good question. So there's a hierarchy to the friends in this game, unfortunately. So in the trailer, do you see like little triangle dudes?
Yeah.
Those guys don't talk.
Okay.
The cubes talk. The ones with the like full faces, they talk. They're the ones that have the names. They're spread, they're like rationed out throughout all the levels. So you don't get one of those cube friends every level. But when you find them, you have a screen where you can go talk to them and get a little dialogue moment, but you don't get a ton extra there.
Okay.
So and then talk to Big Mama even in that screen.
And then do you get to see all the like minor companions that you rescue, or are they just sort of...
I don't remember seeing them anywhere. I could be wrong, but it's really just the cube people that are prominent there.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are our secret games. Ovivo and Billy Bumbum, a cheeky puzzler. Let's move on to our review of Cocoon. It is our featured game. Cocoon is a 2023 puzzle adventure game developed by Geometric Interactive, their first game, and it was published by Annapurna Interactive. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "From Jeppe Carlsen, the lead gameplay designer of Limbo and Inside, Cocoon takes you on an adventure across worlds within worlds. Master world-leaping mechanics and solve intricate puzzles to unravel a cosmic mystery." End quote. Cocoon opens on a beam of light descending down to light a spire and awaken a moth-like creature from a cocoon. This is our character. They're not named, so we're just going to call it the moth. I don't know what should we call it that?
Sure, I thought he was like a beetle. So
I guess it's a beetle. I think when I streamed this, I called it a beetle. So if you want to say beetle or moth or something like that, that's totally fair.
Maybe no, never mind. Thought I had something like
like a
marble bearer or something.
I mean, we could just call him like Jake or something. Like, just give him a name.
I like it. Let's call him Jake.
Okay. So this is a third-person perspective with a wider top-down angle. You explore this world that's lonely, filled with lots of technology and ruins. This is a wordless game, but what we can gather is that Jake has some kind of mission, and that mission involves finding these orbs, and these orbs contain worlds within them. And we have an orange world, a green world, a purple world, and I guess it's a white or maybe a gray world. I couldn't decide on whether it was white or gray, but
I called it white. Yeah.
White. Okay, we'll go with white. And the area you start in is the orange world. You find platforms and switches, and you interact with some technology, and you make progress, and eventually you find a transporter. And when you interact with it, you fly out of the orange world into a world outside of it. And now the orange world is held within this orb. And you can pick up and use this orb to solve puzzles in this new world you're in. And you now find yourself in this facility. It's very industrial and cold and sort of lifeless. And it's looked after by these guardians. And in this place outside the orange world, you can find more orbs. You can unlock powers involving the orbs. And I guess, Disco, this is where we could talk about more of the gameplay, like the Guardians, how they sort of turn into boss fights, and general exploration and the concepts of the orbs. I don't really know where you would want to take it, but
So in Cocoon, you can't like physically do a whole lot, so that does kind of make my job a little bit easier. But like you said, sometimes you'll come in contact with platforms that might catapult you in a specific direction. This will largely serve as a puzzle mechanic, forcing you to think of how to solve a puzzle when only one certain direction is available to you. There are also what you called little friends, and these little things are unlocked by deciphering a symbol order-based puzzle, and will unlock certain paths and ultimately act as a key to the bosses.
Yeah, they're like a little robot that flies by you.
Yeah, like your little dude in Hyperlight Drifter.
Yes.
Just like unlocks things.
Yeah.
But yeah, they will also interact with like a specific obstacle to add certain mind-bending puzzling as well. So you get to utilize them in ways you might not expect at the beginning. But yeah, the primary thing you do in this game is solve puzzles and use your specific orbs, and each orb has a specific skill that it performs. So like one of them will reveal hidden paths, and one of them will make solid invisible platforms, and vice versa. It'll do sort of like an on-off switch. Another one will manifest itself when you pick up a specific orb-shaped item, so it teleports itself. And you use all of these different things to solve a bunch of different cool puzzles, and you start mixing all of those different skills in really unique ways. Apart from that, you can use these orbs and certain teleporting platforms to travel in and out of worlds, like you mentioned. You'll also interact with specific items that assist in certain kinds of boss battles as well. So these are certain items that are exclusive to boss battles, including an orb that will keep you propelled into the air. There's also surfaces that will slow down your walking speed quite a lot.
Oh, yes. Very, very fleshy.
Yeah.
And they almost look like brains.
They look like brains. And yeah, it's gross. And yeah, there's also collectibles. They appear in the form of something called moon ancestors. I'm not totally sure what role they play in the greater scheme of things, but I failed to not collect all of them, so I don't know what happens if you miss one.
Oh, I actually don't think there's a difference.
Okay.
I don't think there's a difference.
So what role do they play? Who knows, but they're fun to find. And then lastly, there are a series of boss battles like we've already talked about, and each one is pretty unique from each other in terms of both design and mechanics and how you defeat them. So those are gameplay and mechanics and
Yeah,
the main obstacles.
This game only really has one button you press.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Pretty
just
mu-
one
yeah,
button.
just one. Yeah.
I guess that's another similarity to Ovivo.
Ovivo. Yep.
There you go. So I think like just that makes it sort of approachable for people.
I agree.
You're not like sprinting, you're not jumping.
You're rarely going to encounter a high input skill ceiling.
Yeah.
You may find a puzzle solving.
And sometimes timing sort of aspects where like you just need to physically move Jake to a spot to flip a switch before something else happens that you've activated. So, there are those times, but yeah, it is pretty straightforward with the control scheme. Cocoon has won many awards and been nominated for tons of things too. It was the Game of the Year for Eurogamer. It won the Breakthrough Award at the Golden Joysticks. It won Best Debut Indie at the Game Awards, and I remember it was one of the nominees for Best Indie Game of the Year as well. It won Outstanding Achievement for an Independent Game at the DICE Awards. Tons of other nominations as well. DiscoCola, we're both big fans of Limbo and Inside. We have Jeppe Carlsen, who like worked on those games, this big mind behind those games, and is now sort of developing this game with Geometric Interactive. This is a new studio, their first game. After playing Cocoon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my overall thoughts. I was really looking forward to it for a long time. I am shocked that there's not a physical yet because it seems like
There isn't?
It's like such a big deal that it should have just like happened day one.
Whoa,
But
okay.
I look forward to double dipping on this one.
Oh, nice.
If that is a little bit of a spoiler for my overall thoughts, but yeah, I've been looking forward to it, and it didn't really disappoint. So I'm very happy with Cocoon. Like Ovivo, most everything that you will need for 100% save is on the main path, or at least visible from the main path. I think this really respects the player's time. Even when certain collectibles aren't on the beaten path, there are usually visual clues suggesting that you look around. So if you're talking about the Moon Ancestors, there's going to be like a little like black kind of ooze that will just sort of like lead you to a path. A lot of the times they're pretty close to the beaten path, but they might just be down in the corner, and you might see there's some of that black ooze down there.
Yeah.
I see a little bit of that.
It really only takes finding one or two of those to understand, oh, that's the symbol that I look for.
Yep. So I think it's really easy to find all of them if you know what you're looking for, and it's pretty easy to figure out what you're looking for early in the game. So I'm a huge fan of that. It makes the 100% really attainable and really respects my time. Another thing I really love about Cocoon is that I'm just a big fan of bugs, mostly from an aesthetic and biological standpoint. So having this as a main source of design inspiration is really cool for me. That's part of the reason I've really been looking forward to it. But then I saw like a lot of our bosses, and that really just drove that home. And I was like, oh, yes, I love the way this boss looks because it's so bug-like, or this is so much like a spider.
And I would say like even the personality of insects is kind of threaded throughout. Maybe not like overtly, but you know how insects have just like instincts and they have jobs that they do sort of mindlessly. That's sort of the nature of how this place feels to me.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
So a lot of that is carried through, I think, in our character and then also in who they meet too.
I think the sound design is really, really satisfying in this game. In particular, whenever you have a specific puzzle that might be bothering you or stump you for a short period of time, the game will offer you just this tiniest swell of music or just a light little musical cue in the background, and it tells you, okay, child, you figured this out now. You can move on.
Yes.
Even if like it's not immediately clear that you solved the puzzle. It gives you that little musical cue.
I was noticing that like I clearly wasn't done with the puzzle because I have to get this orb across a moving platform, and I wasn't sure if I'm carrying the right orb, if I'm doing this in the right order. And when I make the right move, I go across this chasm with this orb, and then all of a sudden behind me, a wall is erected.
Yeah.
And I get that music cue, and that's telling me, oh my gosh, this is not solving the puzzle, but a little sign of progress is really
Yeah,
great.
and that's the other thing is that sometimes you'll get those one-way paths, and it's really cementing that idea in that you've solved it, you've figured it out. So I really love that sound design. I think that's a great way to use just these tiny musical cues. It's comforting, I would say.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the art direction in this game is really awesome, even without the bug aesthetic. The different worlds are really lovely to look at. Each one has an incredibly unique identity that simultaneously synergizes with the orb's color and prominent design feature, and even to an extent, the special skill that it has. So it's like it all has a personality and it all makes sense together. I love that the game is overall almost entirely surmountable. I've said it before, I'm no MacArthur genius, but I'm still figuring out almost all of the puzzles in the game pretty easily. I think that's really satisfying and accessible for a lot of different players that might only be dipping their toes into a puzzle game, because a lot of people will have heard of Cocoon. Maybe they're not all puzzle gamers. So I think the fact that Cocoon is so well known and is really surmountable is going to be really satisfying for a lot of different people. You'll be able to breeze through this game pretty quickly. But perhaps my absolute most favorite thing about Cocoon is that no item, no object really goes unused. I can only think of maybe one or two orb receptacles that maybe I didn't end up using, but this game, it just has purpose, and you use just about everything you encounter to solve the puzzles that you're given. I love that this game is focused on the user experience. Everything you see plays a role, and once you're done with certain game elements, like we said, a door will close behind you. The game is telling you, you've done everything you need to do over there. Move on. No need to worry. Again, people that are looking for challenge will probably see this as handholdy, and I guess I even felt that way a little bit at times, but nevertheless, because this game really explores some really wild puzzle mechanics, I think I really appreciated the safety net, because when you're talking about puzzles that move you outside of worlds and into worlds at specific points that you have to remember, they could have gone really wild with it, and they kept it restrained.
I went into this game 100% expecting to get stuck and to not be able to finish a lot of this game on my own. And I was pleasantly surprised by how much the game is thoughtful toward kind of narrowing paths for you so that it makes you feel smart without holding your hand.
Right, yeah. But there are things that I don't like so much. Luckily, I'm happy to say that there's not really a lot here. There is one puzzle mechanic that I feel like it wasn't really taught to me, and this one is a bit of a reach, because I figured you figured it out much faster than I did when you were streaming it. But I feel that the game didn't really properly teach me that I could drop a marble while airborne.
Yeah.
So
I don't think it does that, teaches that very well. And I think that did take me a while.
It took you a minute, but
Okay.
I had to look it up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that the first puzzle that requires that I was like, oh, that's what I'm missing. Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Another thing, like a Limbo inside or Ovivo and many other games like this, there is a lack of depth. I don't totally mind it in this case, but I do want just like a little bit more history on maybe just the final boss and the moon ancestors, and maybe ourselves for that matter. I don't think it's vital, but I am curious that, these designs are awesome and the ultimate ending and worlds that we explore are really cool. So I do have that curiosity, and it makes me crave that depth that I don't always necessarily feel.
Yeah, I was definitely looking up people's interpretations on the story, because we get characters in this game.
Yeah.
But it's wordless. We're never told anything. We don't have a name. We don't know what this entity is called that we face eventually that's just massive.
Yeah.
And we'll maybe talk about that more in a second. But yeah, it's not always my favorite kind of story to just not be told anything and to leave it entirely up to me as far as what it all means. I think there's just a potential there. Yeah.
And then my last real complaint is that the rules for teleporting in and out of worlds sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes feels a bit murky in parts of the game. Mostly like at the ends of quote unquote a level. It kind of feels like it's teleporting me into a place that I shouldn't have otherwise had access to, and it's only it feels kind of like the game is cheating for me so I can access a new place.
Did you ever go through a portal or like a transporter of some kind and you thought, oh God, I hope this puts me in this place, and if it does, it's going to feel like I'm cheating, and then it did?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, thank God, but also I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So maybe I was just getting lost in the metaphysics sauce, but I did kind of feel like the game was cheating in my favor for a second at times.
I guess it could be worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could be you get trapped. That would be much worse.
Right.
But anyways, I think Cocoon is a brilliantly designed puzzle game with some of my favorite art direction. The game takes just a small pinch of possible mechanics and manages to create just such diverse ways to get through the world of Cocoon. This is such a great way to design a game that is extremely approachable. You're only learning one new thing at a time, and you use it for a great amount of time before doing something entirely new. No two boss battles are the same, and that's so great for a game that could just as easily have no boss battles at all.
Mm-hmm.
I did put this in my top 100 list. It's actually pretty close to Limbo, and because of that, I think I'm going to go with a 9.5 out of 10.
Amazing. 9.5 for DiscoCola. I'm so glad you loved it. You had mentioned that a lot of this game has focus and purpose. That's a great way to describe this, because I was constantly thinking like, this game is constantly thinking about what me as a new player is thinking about. It's putting itself in my shoes. It knows what my shoes are. And yeah, there are some maybe extraneous places where I could put orbs and I don't end up using them, but most of this game is so focused for me, and I was very impressed by that. And that's always what I look out for in these like Limbo and Inside games is like, how well is it constructing the puzzles and the adventure for me in a way where I feel challenged, but I don't feel like frustrated by what it's introducing. And this worlds within worlds thing was intimidating to me on paper. And in practice, Cocoon fulfills the promise of what's possible with single-player wordless adventures. I think this is up there with Limbo and Inside as just being a masterpiece. I think this is a great, amazing game. There are activities you do time and time again in Cocoon, like transitioning between worlds, or releasing the moon ancestors, or solving the glyph puzzles. And every time I get to do one of these things, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done in a game. I just think like, wow, I get to do this. That's so fun.
It's not a chore. You're excited to find more glyphs.
And it's like, I don't really think of any moments as being weak moments. Like there's kind of a loop in this game where, you know, you find your little robot friends that fly around and unlock things through those glyph puzzles. And then maybe you discover a new orb, and then you have to, you know, learn about how that orb works. And then you have to take that orb to another world, you know, like that's kind of the loop that goes on, but there are lots of deviations too. But I never think like, oh, this is the part of the loop I don't like. I simply like all of it.
Yeah.
And that's obviously really great. The world within worlds effect is so seamless. I love this effect. I love how it looks. I don't even want to imagine how it's done, like from a development point of view. Maybe it's easier to do than I think, but I just let it happen and it blows me away every time. The puzzle difficulty has that Goldilocks effect that we've talked about before. We've talked about this with games like Death's Door, with combat, and here I think the puzzle difficulty has the Goldilocks effect. Everything is just right. There is foreshadowing of ideas in each area. As you unlock numerous paths, the game is blocking you from exploring too many wrong directions, a lot like what you were saying. The game is also guiding you in the right direction while preserving the feeling of figuring out a solution to something complex. I just don't know how that balance is achieved. It feels like a trick, but I love the trick. I love that I'm being tricked into thinking that maybe I'm smarter than I actually am. The soundtrack is amazing for all the reasons you said. It feels like the soundscape is really exploring this intriguing sci-fi feeling. The art style and the unique identities of the orbs, they're all distinct. I can think back to how all the different areas and all the orbs look, and they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of personality there without needing to rely on characters and like story and dialogue. Like we're getting it through the environments. So I guess there is a lot of storytelling there. Again, it's not really explicit, but it's very effective at showing us this world through art direction. And then I love the boss fights in this game. They're imaginative. They all have like a quirk that you figure out very quickly.
Yeah.
For dislikes, I mean, I kind of have no dislikes. Honestly,
That's a good thing.
like it's hard. I mean, like if I'm nitpicking, I would play more of this game. So maybe it is too short. Honestly, that's a rare criticism from us. I guess maybe I would have taken more collectibles and miscellaneous activities. I think this is something that games like Limbo and Inside sometimes do more of, and it makes me feel like I could stumble across something more hidden more often. We do have the moon ancestors, but
they're not like crazy hidden.
like you said, you found all 11 or however many there are on your first time through. I missed one.
Yeah, I did a chapter select in the middle of the game not long after I passed it. Like
Got it.
I noticed that I was like getting close to another one. I'm like, I missed one in
I
there,
missed
so I
one.
just
Better go to that.
immediately went back.
I did the same thing, except I waited until the end of the game. But maybe this world could just give us more nooks and crannies. I'm really reaching for criticisms, honestly. The options for solving the puzzles can feel quite open-ended, but the game can also sort of feel linear, I guess. So that's kind of going back to maybe the world just doesn't have as many paths that it could offer you. But that's a slippery slope too, because it could really veer into the other side where, oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed with how many paths there are. So I'm not sure how I feel about that one.
Yeah, I think with the way this game uses its one-way stop mechanic, if you start asking for more of those nooks and crannies, then we're getting into the point where it's like, okay, well now I absolutely have to use the chapter select a couple times in this game.
Yeah. So again, it's hard for me to think of dislikes. I think Cocoon is full of intrigue. It teaches you how its world works through this central gameplay idea that expands in so many directions. This idea of picking up these orbs, going into them, placing the orbs inside of each other, etc. It's polished from top to bottom with a haunting score and diverse sci-fi visuals and a cosmic enormity lurking beneath it all. I contemplated giving this a 10 out of 10.
Whoa.
And I'm actually not sure if it should be a 10 out of 10.
Did it change your DNA?
That's always like the last question I need to ask before giving a game a 10 out of 10. And I think it's just like really close to a 10 out of 10. I did replay it. I got 2 full trophy stacks done. I got 2 platinums out of this game. Playing it through again, I just flew through and had a blast again. That actually kind of felt like a new game because I knew all the solutions. So it felt like it was a different kind of satisfaction because I just felt really
Because it's
good.
like, how fast
skilled.
can I do it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were still some things that I forgot how to do. And I was like, oh no, how do I get the green orb into the orange orb and all that stuff? But I think while I do love this game so much, I think if it was a 10 out of 10, I would know it's a 10.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with, like you, a 9.5.
Okay.
I think it is butting up against the 10s in my list.
Yeah.
So like in my top 100 indie games lists, I have all my 10s out of 10s. And just after that, we have like this game and Celeste. Like almost at a 10. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for 9.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I actually, in my document here, I had 9.5 or 10 out of 10.
We'll figure out when we do the episode.
I'm going to wait, and I don't usually do that. You've been known to do that a few times.
I've done that a couple times, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what my score was until this morning, actually, for Cocoon.
Wow. Yeah, and when it does everything in such a polished way, in such an imaginative way, in a way I've never seen before, I have to contemplate that 10 out of 10. So
yeah, I'm looking at where you put it on your lists right now.
Yeah, it's in my top 5 or 6 for my indie games lists.
Wow.
So it's up there.
It's up there.
Yeah, I really put it high. So is this going to make a top spot in your top 100
It's
games
in my
list?
top 100 list.
Okay.
I put it really close to Limbo. Yeah, it's not quite as high as yours, but it did knock off one of your favorite games off of the list. BioShock is no longer in my top 100.
Oh no. That's like in my top 5 of my overall top 100.
Number 2.
Number 2, yes.
I do love BioShock a lot, but it's just not the gameplay style I love as much.
Understandable. So going back to how the game constructs puzzles and how you have to build these new understandings of logic, this game got to the point where, I'm spending a considerable amount of time figuring out what this puzzle is, like what I'm supposed to do exactly. And there's just enough mind-bendy stuff going on that I get what I'm supposed to do, but I don't understand why or how it works. And so actually I have a moment from when I was streaming this game. This is when we were putting orbs within orbs. This is within the green orb and the orange orb. I got kind of confused. Oh, green inside orange. Bring orange across. I'll end up.
There's that musical cue.
To the top. I go through the teleporter thing. I end up inside of orange because I get spit out of green. And then I pick up green, go back through orange. Or go, I'm going from green into green. And then I go out there. What the hell? How is that even possible? I am in green. But there's the green one. Huh? I don't understand.
I remember that moment when I went from green into green, and I was like, this doesn't work.
I know. And all that talking I was doing was for myself. I was not narrating because I'm streaming and I feel like I have to always be talking. That was purely to reinforce information to myself other than thinking about it, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to think it through.
Yeah, you need that. You need that
sometimes. What are some other mind-bending moments or clever solutions you remember?
Gosh, really, that was like the one. But I went back and I watched your VODs because I didn't get to watch them live. And there was one that I remember took me a while. And then when I watched you figure it out, I'm like, you know what? That's actually really cool. And it's when you have to, you have one of your little friends and you've got that like sticky honey trap that's coming to get him.
Yes.
And you have to activate the sticky honey loop, but then you leave that world, wait for the sticky honey to travel past and go back in. Took me a long time to figure out, but that's so cool.
And when you leave that, you see the little sticky trap in the pool.
That's such a great design idea.
I didn't, replaying it again, I remembered that moment and I thought, I have to look out for if that happens again. That's the only place where that happens.
Yeah.
Where you see that little mirrored image of that happening in the other world.
Yeah.
So there are moments where something amazing happens, and that's the only time in the game that will happen. And they really thought about how to show that moment to you in the best way.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible. I loved using that white orb to shoot projectiles, especially when we started using multiple orbs within orbs to shoot those projectiles. That blew my mind.
That blew my mind, but it was almost too much. It was just like, I can't, so I have to have this. Okay, but it's shooting right, but then I have to have this thing on the left because it's shooting right. And you have to create a chain. Yeah.
And if the first link in the chain isn't oriented correctly, none of the rest of the chain will work. And so I was working on the latter parts of the chain, and that was not the right move. You have to go deeper and deeper until you figure out that first part.
And there would be times when I would be like, okay, so I do it this way, and then this, and then this. Okay, that's the right way. And then I would put it in the right spot, and I would just wait, and I'd be like, okay, I know there's a delay. And then nothing would happen. I'd be like, I got it wrong. And I don't know where.
I know. Yeah. And sometimes you're waiting for that delay, just waiting for that projectile to make its way. And you're like, is it going to work? How long do I need to wait? And then like 20 seconds go by and you go, oh yeah, this definitely would have happened by I was reminded of Portal through the Worlds
Mhm.
Within Worlds
Yep.
eventually, especially when we're using the more advanced green techniques. I was also reminded of Inception,
Yeah.
like this idea of Worlds Within Worlds, very obvious comparison there. And then I loved dropping the orbs midair onto a target. You mentioned that being something that maybe the game doesn't express as clearly at first. And I guess I do kind of agree with you on that specific one. But the idea of there being a tube or there being one of those spider bots and
Mhm.
you have to line it up just right and drop it. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I loved that puzzle. Probably the same one that you're thinking of, where you drop it on the spider bot. That
one
puzzle,
took me a
it took
while.
me a while, and I was like, "What? Okay, but it needs to be here. Okay, so maybe I'm just like waiting for him to crawl over here, and that's the puzzle solution." Yeah, that one took me a while, but when I did figure it out, I felt brilliant.
Yes.
I was waiting for my MacArthur grant at that point. But
It was mailed, but it was going to take a few business days.
okay, so on the flip side of that, we already know mine, but what are some of the puzzles that made you feel stupid or made you maybe like took longer than they should have for you to figure out?
If you watched my VODs, you probably might be able to guess this one. It's actually when we're using the purple orbs
Uh-huh.
and we're using the control stick thing to move the tentacly mushroom thing across the gooey surface,
Mhm.
and we eventually need to get that to this point where we're in front of a bridge we need to cross, but there's like a spotlight on the bridge. And if you walk into that spotlight, you get grabbed and placed elsewhere and you can't cross the bridge. And I just, for some reason, that took way too long for me to figure out where
Yeah.
you're supposed to pick up a purple orb, let it grab that thing, and then just walk right up to the mushroom and grab another purple orb. And while that robot is taking its spotlight off the path, just walk that purple orb across the bridge. It's
Yeah.
the simplest thing. I was overthinking it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
I
was
think
thinking it was more
there
complex.
I think there are certain glyph puzzles too that maybe take a long time.
Yeah. The last glyph puzzle, I understood where the glyphs were. I just didn't understand what order they were supposed to be in.
Yeah.
It was like a row on the top and a row on the bottom. And I was like trying to go, do we go clockwise? Is it counterclockwise? It was left to right. You're just supposed to go from left to right. What
Yeah.
are they? And that took me way too long.
See, and I figured out the left to right thing really quickly, but the thing that I didn't figure out that took me a second first was that there were reflections. And once I got that, I was like, okay, I got it, reflections. But there were two, I couldn't see the reflections for the lower two. I didn't recognize that you had to go to like this
The bottom
lower
one. Yeah.
platform. And so I was just like, all right,
Where
I'll
are
just
they?
I'll
Yeah.
just guess
Guess, and
these
you
two that I
couldn't do
can't
it.
figure out. So
Yeah.
I still got it done pretty quick, but I never saw the reflections of those bottom two.
I think a lot of times where I got stuck, it was because I was overthinking the puzzle.
Yeah.
It was because I am sometimes the puzzle solver where I think the game is out to trick me.
Hmm.
And so I try to be as smart as possible. And I think, well, if I was designing maybe not like a 2 out of 10 difficulty puzzle, if I was designing a 6 or 7 or 8 out of 10 difficulty puzzle, this is how I would do it. I'm going to trick the game back. I'm going to show that I can do it on the first try. And then I would try something and I really quickly hit a dead end. And a lot of times I would just have to simplify my approach and then that's the solution. It's still really satisfying. It's not like a trivial answer.
Right.
So that kind of humbled me in a different sort of way.
No, I
guess.
get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I approach all puzzle games in almost the same way.
Yeah. I think we've been had by so many hard puzzle games that we're just kind of.
Or Pavlov's puzzler.
Yes. When you do try a hard thing and it works out, though,
Yeah.
you feel super good.
Yeah,
It's
you're
just-
like,
yeah.
I
There-
knew it.
I don't know that there was a ton of that in this
Not
game.
in
though.
this one. No.
On those bosses, I really like the purple one, the one where your control is mirrored. You get split in two things.
Yeah.
It was giving me it's giving Chicory a Colorful Tale.
Yes.
It's like, do you remember Chicory a Colorful Tale?
remember
how you
those
control
bosses.
the two paintbrushes or whatever. I loved that because it was a very thoughtful fight because this boss is like making these platforms disappear. And sometimes it's the platform I'm standing on. And there's a button you press to switch your character with the copy so that if you're about to get hit, you can swap with the copy. And if the copy gets hit, you're fine. You don't die or anything. And there were times where the platform disappears and I have a little extra second to swap because I hang in the air for a second. And I was like, oh crap, I have to press the button. I press it and I swap and I'm still alive. But then just the idea of it is really cool. This is where the ground has that like fleshy substance that slows you down.
Yeah.
But I really liked them all.
They're all really cool.
They're all really cool in their own way.
That one threw me through a loop. It's a little bit like trying to read mirrored text for me whenever that mechanic pops up. I'm just like, oh, okay, no, go this way. No, wait, I'm doing it wrong still somehow.
Yeah.
So that can get hard for me. Yeah, I don't know that I have a super favorite one. I think probably just the spider one, the fourth boss where the whole floor is like fleshy except for certain bits where you use the like rocket booster. I think just using that rocket booster was a really satisfying thing to do. So I don't know that I super have a favorite one. I do have a least favorite one, and it's the second one where we're using the orb that shoots us up in the air and we're flying around. Yeah. That one I didn't love so much. There's nothing super wrong with it.
It turns into like a really quick bullet hell. It's not like it's a bullet heck.
Yeah.
It's not quite a hell.
It's just like here, take this for a second.
Yeah, it takes some projectiles here. Yeah.
So that one wasn't my favorite, but
that's fair. And then like the bosses are also reminding me of the big sort of entity that we face later in the game. And when I first saw this thing, it looked really menacing. And I thought, oh, this is like the final boss. This is like the malevolent force that is causing all of the bad stuff to happen. And it was actually more of like an observant sort of character. It seemed like it was just watching us as we were going along.
Yeah, it's like we're being tested.
It does kind of feel like
trying to graduate or something.
Yes, like Jake is almost proving themselves.
Yeah.
And it rewards you for making progress, this entity.
It doesn't like the orb doesn't fall off or whatever. It hands it to you.
Yeah, it like
gently
plucks it out of its face and gives it to you. So
spoilers, sorry, but this is what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it is more of an abstract story, so I don't see it as spoilery, but I probably wouldn't talk about the last cutscene.
Yeah.
But the cutscene that happens at the end was
really cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
That feels like a reward. I feel like we did the game as a complete bow on top of the package of Cocoon, and it makes sense.
Agree wholeheartedly. Any other moments you want to reference? Any other thoughts on Cocoon, DiscoCola?
Just that watching your VOD and thinking back to my own gameplay, this is the kind of game that it's like one of those games that you play and you're like, I wonder if I do this. And then you're like, oh, wow. Like, I know that you said that a lot in your VOD and I was doing that too. I'm like, oh, whoa, I can't believe this is how this is working. That's so cool. It's just a really cool game that it has simple idea that it expands in so many different ways, like you said. So
yeah,
very cool game.
Yeah, indeed. That is our review of Cocoon. You can play it on PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. We both rated it a 9.5 out of 10. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. Underplayed is on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at UnderplayedPod. You can find me in those places at Bopo, that's BO_PO.
And I am at DiscoCola in all of those places to varying degrees. You can also find Underplayed Podcast on twitch.tv/UnderplayedPodcast, where we do early premieres of all of our new episodes on the Monday night before they come out. So come by, chat with us, and listen to the episode just a little bit early, as well as watch some co-op streams from time to time.
And next time we will have 2 more secret games to review, and our featured game will be Pizza Tower, a platformer developed by Tour de Pizza. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.